My memories of Johnny always revolve around my dad wearing his green checked robe. He would always say, I have to go to bed, I have to go to bed. We'll watch his monologue and then we're going to bed. We watch the monologue and he'd say, we'll just see the first guy. He might do Karnak tonight, he might do Karnak. Let's see if he does Karnak, or let's see if he does Floyd Turbo. And then we'd watch that and go like, okay, first guest, we'll just see the first guest. And my dad was always up till the end of the show. My first experience of Johnny Carson was he made my dad laugh. That was at an age when you really want to make your father laugh, and here's this guy who routinely makes my father laugh. On TV, what I always saw with Johnny Carson was someone who tried to make the guest look good and tried to the best of his ability, help people.
No, that last number is very catchy. Really? No, it is. It's got a dumb.
There's an old saying that what's in you comes out on television.
You know, I said it before when you were first on the show, and I mean it. I said, you're going to be something to contend with. You're going to be a big star in this business because you are unique and you're different.
And that was Johnny Carson. He listened and he was curious, and that made him a good interviewer.
His education enabled him to speak with all those people and be comfortable. He was comfortable talking to those people because I think he had a respect for his own intelligence. So he had no insecurity about talking to whoever. It didn't matter. I benefited so much from Johnny Carson existing because I unconsciously, for lack of a better word, I unconsciously, subconsciously, consciously steal from him left and right all the time. People talk a lot about Johnny Carson, and he's become such a icon, and he's so revered that sometimes everyone's talking about how amazing he was, but they're not telling you why. And if you really look at the nuts and bolts of it, he was the complete package. He's physically he's a great physical comedian with a lot of grace. Great at playing comedic moments the way any great improviser, Will Ferrell or Steve Carell would. He could play those moments perfectly with the Jack Benny takes. Great at coming up with one-liners off the cuff, a great ad-libber. But he was also an intellect.
I was born in the Midwest. I was born in Iowa, raised in Nebraska, and... Are you from Nebraska? Where from?
Valentine.
I know Valentine, Nebraska.
Yeah, small.
What?
Small.
Small.
It is. Well, most towns in Nebraska are small. How small is it?
He never forgot his good friends from his youth ever, or his Nebraska ties.
I know that he was one of the most generous men I ever met, but all in kind of secret.
We never heard about it till we read it in the paper. Picked up the paper and said, Johnny Carson. He never told us. He just did it.
And that exemplifies Johnny Carson, the man. He didn't show off. He was a showman, but he didn't show off. He just got the job done, and here it is. And the same way about his generosity. He didn't want a lot of people to know about that.
It worked that way because he wanted it to. And that's the same thing, I think, with his relationship with the university, is in that he never forgot where he got his beginnings.
I mean, that's part of his heritage. I'm sure that's something that he wanted to see carried on. Nebraska, the arts, the culture, the whole thing.
I think it's wonderful. And it'll do a lot of good, and all of you are going to benefit by it. All of us are going to benefit by it.
Well, let me try to explain it. If I could magically, somehow, that tape you just saw, make it run backwards, I'd like to do the whole thing all over again. I bid you a very heartfelt good night.
Hi, welcome to the Johnny Carson School of Theater and Film. My name is Paul Steger, and I wanted to welcome you to the Carson Lecture Series. Before we begin, I wanted to make a note of a few guests that we have here in the audience tonight. I want to thank the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute members for coming. We have a long-standing collaboration with Ollie, especially during the summer with the Nebraska Repertory Theater. So thank you for coming. Welcome here to the Carson Lecture. I wanted to welcome Chuck, Dean of the Hixson-Lied College of Fine and Performing Arts, Chuck O'Connor. Thanks for coming, Chuck. And the Carson Lecture Series is sponsored by the John W. Carson Foundation. And the Carson Foundation has been so generous to the school. They've provided opportunities for our students through scholarships, through technology. They've supported our production programs in both theater and in film, student travel, faculty initiatives, programmatic initiatives. I mean, we really owe a lot of what we've been able to do, pretty much everything we've been able to do in the last 8 years, to the Carson Foundation. And we're really happy to have one of the members of the Carson Foundation board with us today. I want to introduce Larry Witzer. And Larry's accompanied by his wife, Tony. Thanks. Thanks for coming. Well, without further ado, let's meet our guest.
I'm a sailor pig, and I lost my leg! Climbing up the top sails, I lost my leg!
Please welcome Wil Shriner to the show.
Shriner, oh, is a funny kid, this Wil Shriner. Have you seen him? Funny young kid. Yeah, nice young funny kid. He'll be on the show.
Would you welcome Wil Shriner? Wil?
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome actor, director, comedian, MC, general, entertainer superior, Wil Shriner.
Paul, right? Paul. I see my fan club is in a balcony. 200 Claude Rain sitting up there. Hello, everybody. I'm honored to be here. I can't tell you what Johnny meant to me in making my career what it is today, and what it was, and the opportunities. Jump in anytime you want, Paul. But no, you know, I mean, it is an honor to come and see this facility and see what you're doing and how you're encouraging all the young people to find a career in the media and in television and film. And I've spent the day with the film students and the acting students, and it's a great program. You got a great bunch of kids, and I'm flattered. And when Jeff asked me if I do this, I didn't even have to think about it. The first thing I said was, how much? I said absolutely I would be honored to come and to recollect and reminisce about Johnny and whatever you want to talk about. We'll open this up to questions. So if you have a question, please feel free to write it down. Keep your hands inside the ride at all times. But I can't stay long because I left my wife in the car with her mouth running. So I will only be here a few minutes. And, I'm trying to be hip. I'm listening to a lot of rap music. You guys like rap music? I listen to a lot of rap, primarily at intersections, but I listen. And look at the turnout tonight. This is great. We got a nice little thing. According to Glenn Beck, we have over 50,000 people here tonight. So this is fantastic. But stand-up comedy, it's a lot like sex. I could do it alone, but it's really more fun with people watching. Sort of the way I look at it. Paul, jump in anytime you got something. No, so what can I talk about? You got a good audience. They're a good audience. My wife has never passed gas in front of me.
Really?
Yes, because she doesn't stop talking long enough to build up any pressure. That's enough of that. Come on, this is not a comedy club. I'm here to I put a tie on.
No, you look amazing.
Pockets where you guys like this? My brother said this is the happening fashion thing, so. Anyway, I remember when I used to do the Tonight Show, you had to wear the right socks because if you saw skin, it was bad. So you had to wear those, what do they call the really high knee socks?
Knee-high socks. Yeah. Did you have sock garters?
I didn't have garters or anything, but I had some very ugly shoes. My manager believed, and we would get paid like for a big comedian on Tonight Show, you get like $5.50. He believed I should spend every cent on my outfit for the show. I don't know why, but I have a lot of bad outfits in my closet now because of that, and I still have to keep working. But jump in, Paul, when you have something.
Okay.
So what do you want to talk about?
Really, how you got started. I mean, how did you get started? Did you just go to school? Did you, how did you start this stand-up
I started my career, my first entertainment job was probably as an infant. My dad, some folks here remember Wil Shriner from Indiana? You're obviously, not young people. But my dad was on television, he was on radio in the 40s, and then he had a television show in the 50s. He had a show called Two for the Money. And my brother and I are twins, so that was the big thing. He had twins while he was hosting Two for the Money, and he says, I'm just glad I'm not hosting 21. And, but so he would, like I do, would use us in little bits and things. So I did a Linnet commercial. I did some acting early on, and my mother invested that money, and when I was 18, I got it and bought a Firebird with it. Spent the whole thing. But I grew up, he gave us a movie camera when we were little kids, and that was, I think, the way a lot of people started, was you give your kids a little camera and they made little home movies and things like that. And so I made little movies with my brother, was the actor. My twin brother is Scotty, his real name is Kin. He was named after Kin Hubbard, who was an Indiana humorist, but he plays Scotty Baldwin on General Hospital. Anybody watch General Hospital? I'll tell him it got very spattered response. But he was married to Laura, and then Luke came along, and I got my after card, after's a union, as being an usher in his first wedding. And then he was getting married again to Laura 25 years later, and I was trying to get my son that usher job because he needs an after card. But so, we kind of grew up around show business. I remember we had a gibbon ape when I was a kid, and a gibbon is a primate, and my dad, they liked the monkey more than us because he didn't talk back, he didn't sass them, but they would dress us all up alike, and it was very...
The gibbon, too?
The gibbon and my brother and I, being twins. My mom would dress us up in sailor suits and take us out for Sunday brunch, and we'd always go, Mom, we're 23 years old, this isn't fun at all for us. But we had this monkey, so I was the monkey wrangler because the monkey hated my brother for I don't know for what reason, but so I would take the monkey on the road with my dad, and he was doing live dates, pop. He would go out and he had a pops orchestra and a folk singer and a guitar player, and they would do an evening performance. So I was the monkey wrangler, and I always remember my dad would work like 1 hour once a week, and I thought, I like this schedule. So that's
1 hour a week.
Yeah, 1 hour a week. Yeah, a couple, maybe 2 hours. So I was sort of incentivized to get into show business, and my mother was a dancer in vaudeville, so they didn't encourage us at all to go into show business. But my parents died when I was 16 in an auto accident, so we suddenly were on our own, and we were, I finished high school and went to college in Gainesville for a couple of years, and then I went out to go to UCLA to check out the film school. And at 20, I went to California, and I said to my brother, I'm going to LA, you want to go? And he says, well, he's very inarticulate. He's my twin brother. He's 8 minutes older than I am. He claims they're the happiest 8 minutes of his life, I can wait for you if you need more time on some of these. We've really got an hour to kill. So we both went to California at 20, and I went to UCLA Film School, and he went to acting school, and he became a Universal contract actor. And he got dropped after the first year, and he got General Hospital, and he's been 33 years just playing this same part. No range at all. So he's been doing, so we've both been bouncing back and forth, and now I live in Florida, and we'll get to that, but I made a movie down there, and I just decided to stay. But at 20, I made these little funny films, and I would sneak into these art houses and show my little film in front of, whatever the feature was, and they would get big laughs. They were like funny little newsreels and things like that. And I went to the Comedy Store one day, which was up on Sunset Strip. I lived in Laurel Canyon, and I saw Jay Leno and Richard Lewis and David Letterman and all these people there. And I immediately had been working as a production assistant. I'd worked for Dick Clark. I'd worked for Max Baer on a movie. I did a year on Ode to Billy Joe, a movie he made. And I worked for Dick Clark all through. One of my early jobs in show business was Dick had a show called Live Wednesday, and it was going to be his attempt to do the Ed Sullivan Show. And it was a disaster, the first show. It didn't go well. And we went back to the director's house to watch, and Dick, had a couple wines, and a couple more wines. And my job was to drive him back home. And he fell asleep in the van on the way home. And his wife said, Dick's asleep, could you help me get him up to the house? I said, yeah, I was a young guy. I threw Dick Clark over my shoulder. I carried him up to the house. He lived in Malibu. I said, where do you want him? She said, well, could you take him up to the bedroom? I said, yeah, sure. We go up to the bedroom. I throw him on the bed. I said, you want me to undress him? She goes, no, I got it from here. And Dick was on my show, my talk show, and I said, Dick, remember that first job I had? Joe, don't tell that story, please don't tell that story. But that was one of my first jobs in television, and I worked in a bunch of different movies and TV shows for a while, and then I saw my brother getting all the girls and all the fame and the limousines, and I thought, I'm on the wrong side of the camera, so I went to the Comedy Store, and I met these guys, and I started showing my films at the Comedy Store. I put a screen up and a projector, and I showed these they were funny newsreels and things like that, and they went over really well, and I was immediately a regular at the Comedy Store, and that's where I met David. And David was, he was the house MC, and David was one of the most brilliant MCs. He could just kind of, work the crowd over. He had all these great things that people have stolen ever since. Somebody would heckle him. He said, oh, hey, a young man sharing a brain, and he had all these great ad libs. And he said, if I ever get a show, I would like to have you on it. Well, he started hosting The Tonight Show. So my first 3 exposure to The Tonight Show was I came on and I did a film about behind the scenes at The Tonight Show. And it went over very well, and I got invited back again to do it. And then I did something about the Democratic Convention for the next visit. And then my third visit was David. I did a stand-up monologue, and I came over and sat down and talked to David. So, it's like off and running, So and then David got this show in New York. David had a morning talk show. People don't remember, it only lasted for a summer, but it was at 10 in the morning live for 90 minutes. And it was a brilliant show where all of David's sort of bits had come from. But we did the show for 90 minutes every day live, and the producer said to me, if David ever doesn't show up one morning, I'm going to put you in the chair. So I was like, oh, okay, well, I better pay attention then, But I was a writer and a performer, and I did regular film pieces on there. So that was sort of my big break, and then I finally got to get on with the man. And the first couple of times I was on, I didn't get this. Yeah. And I stood over there like this. But that was the big endorsement, was if Johnny, as a young comedian, if Johnny called you to the panel, that was sort of, you were in show business. It was like, it was bigger than like Miley Cyrus twerking. Because you were like an overnight star. I mean, it was like winning American Idol. It was like winning the X Factor. The next day, wherever you went, the gas station, the dry cleaner, everybody saw you and they go, hey, I saw you on a Tonight Show, you're funny. And you'd get I got a job. I think the first Tonight Show with Johnny, I got a job in Vegas opening for Paul Anka. And I mean,
right off the bat.
Right off the bat. Well, but I had an act at that time. But it was a springboard to this tremendous opportunities, and that was the track for comedians. in the 70s and 80s, get on Johnny, make Johnny laugh, and get, you know, your own show. You know, and Roseanne had happened for, and Drew Carey and Jerry Seinfeld. At that time, I wasn't as interested in being on a sitcom. Much later in life that I realized how great The Life is great, and then you own them. Like Jerry, you know, never has to work another day. Ray Romano, those guys, you know, they own their shows, and it's tremendously lucrative. But for me, it was, you know, it was coming back with Johnny. Once you got on, then you better have another set to come back. And then it became like, oh, I got to come up with another 6 minutes, another 6 minutes. So it forced you to write. And you would go rehearse, you would work out this 6-minute monologue, and you would go all over town to all the clubs, and you'd try it out and make sure it worked. There was no dead air and anything. And I would generally, the night before I would go on, I would try to go like at 1 in the morning when there were like 2 people in the improv drunk and, you know, not paying attention. And I would do the set, and if I could remember it under those circumstances, I knew that on the Tonight Show it would be easy to remember, because the laughs, it was like this. It was 500 people that would just rake down, well, 500, I say 500, but it was like more like 250. But no, the Tonight Show had 500, and the laughs would just pour down on you. And you would see that comedian come out and, you know, hello, and they do their first joke, which was generally about themselves, and they would get that big laugh, and you'd see them all kind of go, oh, this is going to be fun. It was like a ride. And because doing other shows never had the kind of studio audience that Johnny had, and it was just a great high as a performer. You know, I've worked for 10,000 people. I opened for Anne Murray, and I'd work in 10,000. You don't know how you're doing with 10,000 people because you can't hear the laughs. On that show, the laughs were on you, and you were, you were enveloped in the love and laughter. And so it was for me in the early '80s, it was a great springboard. And then, do you want me to keep talking about my career?
I was going to say, you assembled some clips for us of getting to the monologue part. I mean, to help us understand sort of what a comedian goes through just to sit with Johnny. I mean,
right.
The idea was do the monologue and then sit.
Right. That was the goal of everybody, and everybody wanted to get to the panel. I mean, if you were an actor, you were going to come out through the side curtain, and you were going to sit down and plug your movie. But if you were a comedian, you were looking for the endorsement of the king.
Yeah. Well, we've got that clip.
We have it.
Let's look at it.
Goodness, where'd you get this? Oh, I gave it to you.
Yeah.
This is Ed McMahon along with Tommy Newsom and the NBC Orchestra inviting you to join Johnny and his guests, Jack Lemmon, Wil Shriner, and Buddy Rich.
I don't mind if at the height of lovemaking a woman fakes the moment, but this one played a tape and lip-synced it. Anyway, you've been great. Thank you. Wil Shriner. Thank you, Will. We'll be back in a moment. There he goes. Right.
Good stuff. Thank you, Will. That's very funny stuff. Good. We'll be right back. Stay where you are. Good shot.
Good, Will.
Boom.
And my wife is mad at me because I have bachelor habits. I've been married, not that long, and I've been a bachelor a long time. I have bachelor habits that I haven't been able to break yet. I still wake up in the middle of the night, jump up in bed, and go, 4 o'clock, I got to get home. Wil Shriner.
Good to see you.
Good stuff.
You old married man?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Going all right, though, huh?
Yeah, pretty good.
Okay, let me do this, and then we'll come back and I think get a little piece of film or something we're going to show you. Okay,
Great.
Stay where you are. We'll be back.
Great.
I was like a deer in headlights waiting for that. A friend of mine once said if he was on a Tonight Show and he killed and Johnny was like, come over, he was going to go.
So how many times were you on before you got to this point?
Well, I think I was on 3 with Dave, and then I think that was like my 3rd or 4th time that I got over with Johnny. At that point, I was doing bloopers and practical jokes with Ed McMahon, so I knew Ed fairly well, and I'd been a judge on Star Search a couple times. And my manager managed Doc Severinsen. So, you know, I would see Johnny they had a poker game that would play every Tuesday. Bud would always say, come up here, Johnny's coming up early, you know. And Johnny was very shy to be around. You know, he was, you know, he was such a great guy, but, you know, he was, his happiest moment is, of course, on the show when he's cooking, you know, so I knew Johnny casually, but you know, I was like anybody else. You had to prove yourself to get over there. So when I got that shot to go over, then I think, well, we might have another clip, but I eventually got to where I could just come out and sit down and do some panel stuff, and that was, you know, that was making Johnny laugh. I have a couple clips, and I think we'll see him later, but to get Johnny was a great audience. He was a great interviewer. You know, Johnny had this charisma. You know, men wanted to hang out with him, women wanted to sleep with him. You know, I mean, everybody loved Johnny. You know, and he was, you know, he was the personification of what a host is. It was about the guest doing well. You know, a lot of hosts today are more competitive with their guests. They don't want to see the guests getting the bigger laugh. If there was a laugh, Johnny knew he got credit for it because it was his show. Johnny would set you up. If you needed help, he would give you help. If you didn't need, if he knew you were cooking, he'd let you go. I mean, that's what made Johnny so unique and so much of an original that we've never seen anybody like him. I mean, you know, the hosts of today, you know, I mean, David is a very interesting interview, and you know, Jay is a great jokesmith, a great monologist. You know, Conan is inventive. You know, Jimmy Fallon is a great mimic. Everybody has skill sets, but they don't have that complete package that Johnny had.
Yeah. Well, we've got, so you've done your good monologue, been called over to the panel. Now you've got to make Johnny laugh. We've got another clip. Let's take a look at one of those times you had the chance to actually sit on the panel.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And then kind of work through that.
Okay.
Let's take a look.
If you insist, you're in charge.
Have a baby, I hear.
We're having a baby, yeah.
Yeah, that's exciting, isn't it?
Yeah, she's 4 or 5 months along. Yeah. And started taking a Lamaze class.
Oh, you're one of those too?
Yeah, it's a terrible class taught by an asthmatic. It really throws off our breathing there.
1 second, I thought, what? Oh, yeah. That has got to disturb the breathing pattern, right?
Oh, yeah, it throws it way off. Well, for years, she's been saying, I want to hear the patter of little feet around the house.
Yeah.
I tried bringing home Emmanuel Lewis. I couldn't do it.
Birthday Villages was busy.
Nothing worked. And but she's being real good about having a baby. She's not drinking coffee. Because they say, medical, AMA says now, if you drink too much coffee, there's a high risk that the child will look like Joe DiMaggio.
That's funny. Look, we got, you do these wonderful little film pieces.
Yeah, I did a joke about it. I was afraid of marriage. You know, a friend that was married so many times, he sends his alimony checks out bulk rate.
It does save money. That's what you call a truth joke, a real truth joke. Was it everything you thought it was going to be? I mean,
yeah, I mean, I almost got married in high school, which probably would have been a mistake. Really? I thought I got a girl pregnant, but I got out of it. It's costing me a fortune keeping that rabbit on a life support system.
That's funny. All right. Now,
yeah, if you're going to nice places, when I go to a nice hotel or casino, then I take her with me. Sometimes, you know, when you go to these comedy clubs, you stay in these dumpy hotels.
Right.
I stayed in one the other night. They had towels stolen from other hotels.
Yeah, kind of a cheapo.
Oh, yeah, the house detective didn't carry a gun. He just snapped a towel. I'm sorry, I don't want to open a bar of soap and find hair already on it. You know what I mean?
Take some fun out of marriage, yeah. Okay, we'll be back. Connie Chung is going to join us in a moment.
I always wanted to wait. You know, my wife, her biological alarm clock went off about 2 years ago, and I've been hitting the snooze button. But it's really wonderful. You know, you can wait now.
Yeah.
Which I think is neat. If you want to have children, like sperm banks are the way to go. You can, if you want to have grandchildren, you can open an IRA account. And, no, it's true that the, you know, the male, you know, you can now freeze it.
That's what they say, yeah.
It takes a real man to fill up one of those ice cube trays, I tell you that.
Is this what we've got tonight?
I got one with me that I did with my dogs. My dogs.
Does it need any explanation? Or
Yes, just anybody that has dogs knows what trouble it can be. But, you know, when you try to show somebody, they never do it. So I hid the camera one day and caught my dog up to their antics. So with a hidden camera, they didn't know what was going on. But
so they weren't, you know, intimidated at all.
Yeah,
All
they
right,
didn't
here
even
we
know
are.
I was there. They're just, they're like regular dogs, you know. They like to play around the house occasionally. Occasionally they'll play catch. But oftentimes they'll chase UFOs around the backyard. But when I'm not there, that's when the trouble begins. They get in my pants and get my car keys out, and sure enough, they'll talk one another into going for a little joyride in my car. They wait till the coast is clear, then they make their break. I'm proud to say they're safety conscious, though, and they always buckle up.
That's funny.
They'll go cruising around the neighborhood. You know, trying to pick up some poodles or something,
Yeah.
I don't know. But, you know, I never worry about him at all, because Cooper is a very good driver.
Right. Very good. When they pick
Petey
up a
can
dog,
relax.
they pick up a dog, right?
Look out the window, because Cooper obeys all traffic laws.
Yeah, very good.
You know, I'm proud, though. They always drive carefully in residential areas, you know, and watch out for their pals crossing the street. Uh-oh, uh-oh, it's a friend of theirs, Wally. Wally, no! Oh, no problem. Sees them and can stop in time, unless it's that pesky cat next door. Whiskers, get him! If you see these dogs in your neighborhood, keep your cat indoors. And that's a little look at my dogs there.
Oh, very funny.
That was such a stupid film. I did that film, it was like my little 16 camera. I did it for Stupid Pet Tricks for Dave, and I mean, it was like a good luck. I mean, Francis Ford Coppola's casting director, Fred Roos, who cast all the guys in Rumblefish and Outsiders. Fred saw this, and he collected funny films, and he brought me into his office and said, can I get a copy of that film? I thought it was really funny, and I said, sure. And he goes, are you an actor? And I went, yeah, what have you heard? And he said, well, I would like you to read, go outside, look at this part, come back and read for me. I read for him. He says, can you come back and meet Francis for this movie, Peggy Sue Got Married? And I thought, well, there's a golden opportunity. You know, I just wanted to meet Francis. I didn't really even care so much about being in the movie. But that little film was like a good luck charm. It got me on bloopers. I mean, it was one of these silly things. I did it probably in 1978. You can see how grainy it is. I mean, it was 16 millimeter. And I remember the other clip with Johnny, the joke about filling up the ice cube tray, got a big laugh. But Johnny was mad at me over that. He thought it was a little too risque. Yeah, it was. You know, yeah. I didn't get back on the show for like a year after that because. And the talent coordinator, Jim McCauley, he said, if it's going well, if it's going well, go for it. And so the minute I did it, and it got a big laugh. And I mean, it got a big laugh on the show, but then and Freddie DeCordova came back and said, Johnny's a little upset with that material. And Jim said, I told you not to do it. That's what show business is all about, dismissing any blame. But, it all worked out. And, it was a joke that I've used in my act. And it's, when it gets a good laugh, you never let it go.
Wow. I didn't realize that. I mean, Johnny often did some things to...
Well, he did an Art Fern sketch that had to do with the size of a donkey's anatomy in the same show, and I thought, well, if that's okay, I'm going for it. But
so how did this thing with so you moved from a comedian now to an actor? You gave us some clips from Peggy Sue Got Married, which Oh
yeah, well, my acting career, that was like sort of, I'd done little home movies, and I'd done I played, doctors and various ne'er-do-wells in television shows. Yeah. My famous quote is that, and it's not my quote, but it's, I'm not an actor and I have 12 movies to prove it. It's a great Victor Mature line, but I didn't love acting that much, but I loved Francis Coppola, and being in The Godfather was like one of the great films of all time, and he was a great filmmaker. So I was more excited about working with Francis than I was about, and my wife in the movie, my girlfriend and wife is Joan Allen, who's, a tremendous actress, gone on to be an Academy nominee, and so it was Jim Carrey, Harry Basil, Helen Hunt, Nick Cage, Kathleen Turner, and we were all up in Santa Rosa, very close to Francis's house in Napa Valley, where we spent every weekend depleting his wine collection. The fact that he still has a wine business after that movie is amazing, because we were enjoying his wine. But to act is, it's like, it's really the great thing. But for me, I was still confused with what I was doing. But I went to in Peggy Sue, I went every day to the dailies. The dailies are when they show what they shot the day before. And, the cinematographer and the editor and Francis and a few people go and they watch the work as it's progressing. And occasionally an actor would show up if they had some big dramatic scene. But I was there every day, and they were like, "What are you doing here? You're not in this thing. You're not in the scene today." I said, "I'm going to school. I'm going to learn. I'm going to learn and watch." And we had Jordan Cronenweth, who was a brilliant director of photography, who had done Blade Runner and some really beautiful movies. I mean, this was like going to class for me. And Francis knew this was my love. So I would stand in the wings, and I'd go to the set every day, whether I was working or not, and watch him work. And I'd ask him questions. And he was very, forthcoming with, Barry Miller was having this dramatic scene where Francis, take 27, take 28. And one time, we're like on take 28, and I looked at him and I said, "Well, how come you're doing it again?" He goes, "I'm wearing him down." But I got to learn through osmosis about being a director, and how a director relates to an actor, how a director, stages a scene, shoots a movie.
Yeah, and he's always been kind of, I guess, known for being open about that. I mean,
his family, his two kids worked on Sophia, who's become a beautiful director in her own right. Sophia played the daughter. She was a pimply-faced daughter in the movie, and his two sons, Roman and Gio, shot video assist of rehearsals. But every day we would all, Jim Carrey and all of us, we would all like pinch ourselves. Nick was his nephew, so Nick wasn't as enamored as we were. Every day we'd keep thinking, "I'm in a Francis Ford Coppola movie." We'd like, when are we getting fired? Because we were all insecure through this rehearsal process. So we hung around, and it was a tremendous experience. I mean, and the movie came out and it was the closing event at the New York at the Lincoln Center for the New York Film Festival. So we went in to see. The first time we got to see it was we went in, and it was on a screen that was like 6 stories high. I mean, it was like, I remember that as another. It was like getting on and scoring on the Tonight Show was like a career goal for me anyway, and for a lot of people. When you'd be behind the curtain and you're back there and you're coming out, and this big heavy curtain, and you'd hear the band bump 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 boom boom, and you hear this thud, the music stopping, and you'd hear, "Our next guest is a comedian who's coming out here." And the curtain would open, you'd come out, and it was like your heart would just skip a beat. This was like big opportunity, and that was the same thing going to this film festival and seeing yourself on this big screen. And I started, I believed a little bit of, "Hey, I'm an actor now. Get my limos around here. Bring the limo up." But shortly after that, I had done this Amazing Stories episode for Kevin Reynolds, who's a great director who did Robin Hood and Waterworld. Well, we shouldn't mention Waterworld, but he did a bunch of really good. And so now I'm off and running as an actor, and I'd always had in the back of my mind being a talk show host and being like Johnny. And Alan Thicke was set to do a talk show for Westinghouse, for Group W. They used to do Hour Magazine, and they did a bunch of shows. And Alan was going to do this talk show, and suddenly he got growing pains. So the producer called me up. He said, "Well, Alan's not doing a show. Would you be interested in coming in and meeting about hosting a show for us?" Well, yeah, sure, why not? So I came in and I had this meeting, and they said, "Well, yeah," I said, "I'd be interested in doing this." So they sent me around the country to their stations where I would fill in for a week and kick out whoever would, like the local people are talking. It was in Philly and Boston, San Francisco, Baltimore, and Pittsburgh. And so I did a week in each of these markets guest hosting, and I learned how to be a talk show host, or got better at it. And we made this pilot. Michael J. Fox, John Larroquette, and Debbie Allen were on the pilot. We went to the big NAPTY television convention, and this was in '86, and we sold 107 markets at that convention in New Orleans, and we were like, we're off, the show was off, and we were golden from when you sell the show to when you go on the air. And so I had this career as a talk show host, and we did 200 hours of the show, and it got some Emmy nominations, but Group W was having some management issues, and everything was falling apart around the company, so the show didn't get picked up for another year, but I had such a great time doing it. But of course I killed my acting career doing that, because once you're perceived as a personality, you really can't be an actor again. So then I just kept hosting stuff,
Well, I mean, with Peggy Sue Got Married, there was this sort of casting thing where, I mean, you guys have to play high school kids, and you have to play.
Right. It was because it takes place. She goes to her high school reunion, passes out, and wakes up at 25-year high school reunion. So you'd be what, 25 and 18? You'd be like 40, 43.
Yeah.
And then we're supposed to go back to high school. So they were going to cast us all in our mid-30s. I remember going to the casting, sitting between Steve Guttenberg and Judge Reinhold, who were stars at that time, sitting on the couch waiting to meet Frances, thinking, who's not getting a job here? But I ended up I didn't get the Nick Cage job, but I got Arthur Nagel, who was I was a born-again tire salesman. We have a clip of that. I went and picked out a very ugly green leisure suit. I wore a fat padding. I had Francis, I said, I'll shave a hole in the back of my head, if you want me to. And he said, okay, I dare you. And I go, yeah, go ahead. Yeah. And they came and they shaved my, friar tuck in the back of my hair. I was fearless in those days. But so if you want to see, this was, the idea of this was that, we had to play both sort of ages. And the movie runs to this day once a week on television. It's been phenomenally successful as a just as a perennial.
It's a great movie. I loved it.
Yeah, it didn't it made money, but it wasn't They got 3 Oscar nominations. They got an Oscar nomination for wardrobe, which I wore. We got an Oscar nomination for cinematography, for lighting and camera work, which bounced off of me. And for...
Joan Allen, didn't she get
No, not for Peggy Sue. I think Kathleen got a nomination for that, but we didn't win any. But it's still nice to have on your resume, Oscar-nominated film. Sometimes I cross out the nominated.
It has to do with the ribbon.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, some whiteout. Why is it whiteout on it? But yeah, anyway, so it was a fun experience. You want to show that clip?
Yeah, let's look at it.
Well, roll that clip of Peggy Sue Got Married, 1985. I think we shot this in 1985.
Here we go.
The reunion committee has given this a lot of thought and decided on 2 people who best represent the spirit of Buchanan High's class of '60. The king is someone who in more ways than one has come a long way since he left here, and we are especially proud to welcome him back, Richard Norvik. Come out here, King Richard. I demand a recount.
That's gotta be Getz. First you gotta learn how to count.
Hold me back, hold me back.
Well, I just want to say thank you. Sharon and I feel real welcome. We're having a great time. Boy, high school looks really good from up here. And I just want to say it's good to be back. Thanks a lot.
The Yankees got the pitching, but the White Sox got the defense.
What are your colors going to be?
Hey, Kubek and Richardson any day over Fox and Aparicio.
I guess I'm thinking pink and green. Carol, what? What a tramp. Oh, my God.
I think that pitching wins pennants. The Tigers have got 4 20-game potential winners.
You'd be surprised at how many girls in school aren't virgins.
Like who?
Don Mossy, Frank, Larry, Jim Bunny, and Paul Foytak.
And now, direct from 4 weeks of rehearsal in Walter's garage, 4 guys who have prided themselves on becoming the greatest singing group in the world, Walter, Leon, Terry, and Charlie, The Definition.
Just a dream, just a dream. All our plans and all our schemes. How could I think?
How about that on-screen kiss, huh?
How about it?
Whatever.
Romantic lead.
Whatever happened to Joan,
I'm just thinking, I'm just thinking of you in that Nick Cage hairdo.
Oh, I know.
And,
What happened to my hair? People, I don't know.
It's because you shaved off that Friar Tuck.
I had dark hair. I'm getting old. It's scary. I don't know. But yeah, it was a great time, a great fun. We had so much fun. We would go up every weekend and play at Francis's house. We have home movies of us. Francis has all his toys. He has the Godfather desk up in his study, and he has the PBR boat from Apocalypse Now in the back. And we have home movies where we're recreating scenes, you know, oh, the horror, you know. And we were water skiing behind the boat, you know, the Kong don't surf, and we're all creating it. And Francis he had a ventriloquist puppet. And he would bring it out and do bad ventriloquism with it. Now there might have been some wine involved, but it was such great. And I have home movies from it. And I got to dig them out because you know when they were doing something for the DVD, and I said I have all these great home movies, but they're in a storage locker somewhere, you know.
Well, you can send us those. We'll be happy to put them up. So you end up kind of changing again from actor to talk show host. I'm sorry to have interrupted you there and kind of gone back to Peggy Sue, but so you ended up now you're kind of a talk show host. And how did that go?
Well, 87, the talk show was fun. I mean, I really loved the job, and we had a lot of comics on, a lot of magicians, and a lot of people. And in those days, we would get like a 3.6 rating. And the network or the Group W was upset. Why aren't you getting a 4? You know, today Ellen DeGeneres gets like a 1.2, a 1.4. You know, we were, you know, but they were, you know, the rating expectations were higher. And so when the show ended, you know, I became sort of like a go-to host. I hosted the Miss Teen pageant, you know, and I remember I got in trouble there because I thought that if the girls are going to compete in the swimsuit competition, I should host the segment in a swimsuit. And Procter & Gamble did not find that amusing at all, you know. I still did it, and I did a video piece where I take 50 girls out on a date, and we went to like, it was like a clown car. I kept getting them in the car. Hello Brandy, hello Sandy, hello Mandy, and they all get in the car. We went out on a date, and I wanted to have a big couch for the interview where they would just keep moving down the couch, you know? But they kept, and the producers, I think we had a cease and desist before we shot the show. And this was live. It was a big, live, crazy show. And, but I did that, and then I hosted a show called Primetime Pets, which was a CBS, that was the one with me and the orangutan in the beginning. And I remember this great orangutan from Animal Actors, and I had a co-host, Dorothy Lucy, and I said I like having this orangutan as a co-host because it takes less time in hair and makeup. And but this show was a CBS big primetime show. We did about 10 of them. But it was right at the time where CBS was trying to be the Tiffany network. You know, we're at the classy network. And one of the reviews was, CBS, who attempts to be the Tiffany network, gives us a show like Primetime Pets. And it was like, and Jeff Sagansky, who ran the network at the time, it was just not, it didn't do us any favor. But internationally, it ran all over the world. And, you know, people said, oh, I saw it in Brazil, because they would dub my voice in. It was a very popular show, but CBS wanted to keep it on just for the international rights. But it was short-lived. It lasted 10 episodes and out. Yeah. And then I went on and hosted a couple shows for the Family Channel. I did That's My Dog, which was people would bring their real house pets, and they would compete in like a decathlon and special talent and all this stuff. I hosted that in Florida. We would go down and we would go to Orlando, Disney Orlando, and my kids were little at the time, and it was like their playground. They had like complete run of the park because I knew they couldn't get out of there. And that's when I knew my son wanted. My son's is an aspiring comedian. I knew when he was little, they would go to Disneyland, Orlando, and every day you would be in a conversation in the Hollywood Bowl set, and you'd go around, you'd drop in, and every day they would induct you into the Disney Hall family of whatever it was, and you'd put your hands in concrete in front of the Grauman's Chinese Theater set, and you'd be inducted. We do it every day, and my son and I worked out a little bit. He was like 3 years old, and I'd say, it was nice to be here. This is my wife, and this is my son. I said, what's mommy got? And she was pregnant with my daughter. I said, what's mommy got in her tummy? And he would go, baby sister. And I said, and what do you have in your tummy? And he goes, teddy bear. And I said, and what does daddy have in his tummy? And he'd go, gas. And he would get a laugh every day. And one day, it didn't get much of a laugh. And he looked at me and goes, bad crowd. And I said, he's got the ear. He's got the ear for comedy. So I did that show for 3 or 4 seasons in Orlando. It was a great show because we'd go down there and we'd tape a bunch of them in the middle of July. And people in Florida, if you've been to Florida in the middle of July, people were happy to be in the air conditioning for half an hour to watch our show. So we got a fresh audience we did 5 a day. And then I came back and I did a show called Why Didn't I Think of That, which was a show where inventors, kind of like Shark Tank, but it was a show where inventors would come on and show us their crazy inventions, and we would test them out, and we would have the invention of the day. And that was for Goldwyn and syndication. That lasted 2 or 3 seasons. And then I went on, I did a show called Small Talk, which was like Hollywood Squares with kids, and kids were all on videotape. And we did 65 half-hour episodes in like 7 days. We would just crank them out. We did the only break was so I could change my sweater or my jacket or whatever. So we would do 8 or 9 a day, and I think we did 63 like in 7 days. And that ran for a long time on the Family Channel. Then the Family Channel got bought by, somebody bought it from Pat Robertson, and I think Pat Robertson bought it. And then whatever, it changed hands. And then, so I was doing all of these kind of, jobs. And at the same time, I was on the road opening for people, doing corporate jobs. I do a lot of corporate. I go in and I'll do MC corporate shows. I'll moderate conventions for all kinds of weird. I just did 500 bankers at the Del Coronado in San Diego, and I did 200 lawyers at the Ritz in Orlando. And you go around and you do that stuff. That pays the bills and keeps the credit cards working. And I would keep doing that and keep doing that and keep hoping, to get another show. And my manager called me up and said, the breakdowns is where they put out what they're looking for a partner. They're looking for a host for a show. And it said, they're a Wil Shriner type. Perfect. Put me in. And he said, no, the younger, cheaper Wil Shriner. So I didn't, so that's when the writing was kind of on the wall for me, that I was getting, older and not as employable. So that's when I shifted gears and I went to a TV Academy thing celebrating 2 great directors, Jimmy Burrows, who did Cheers and Friends, and Jimmy's done all the great, and Jay Sandrich, who goes back to Andy of Mayberry, but Jay did Mary Tyler Moore, Newhart, he did all the great sitcoms. And they were being honored and they were showing things, and I used to play cards with Jay. So I went, and Kelsey Grammer was there, and Kelsey and I grew up in Florida, and we knew each other through mutual friends in Florida. And he said, "Why are you here?" And I said, I'm hanging out because I'm thinking about getting into TV directing, sitcom directing." He goes, "Well, if you want to direct, call my office tomorrow. I'll set it up. Come down and learn from us." And I said, "That was wonderful." And he gave me that opportunity. And the next day, I'm like, "When can I be there?" He goes, "Come on down." And I went for a year, and I hung around. I watched all the directors on Frasier, Pam Fryman, who's one of the greats who does all How I Met Your Mother, and Andy Ackerman, who did all the Seinfelds, and Jeff Melman, and all these people. And they would all share little nuggets about what they do and why they do it, and why are you doing this, and why, and I had pretty good access because I was a friend of Kelsey's, and they would take me on other shows with them. And after about a year hanging around, the exec producer said, "I assume you're looking to direct one of these." I said, "Oh, it's my dream, and they said, "Well, we're going to put you in January 2000. And I got my first Frasier episode was something about Dr. Mary. It was a great written script by his father wrote all the Mad Magazine. Who did all the Mad Magazine parodies? Jake Hogan. So Jake Hogan wrote this script, and this episode was just the home run for me. It was a great episode. Kelsey was great in it. It won a Humanitas Award, which is a prestigious writing award it dealt with the sensitivity of racism. And from there, I got a Ladies' Man, which was a short-lived show that Betty White and Alfred Molina and Sharon Lawrence did. It was not a great show, but they were a great cast. I did that, and then I was like the buzz. This guy's kind of directing a lot of stuff. And then I got the season finale of Everybody Loves Raymond. In my first year directing, I'm just a new guy. And so I did those 3. Then the next year, your agent's like, "Well, he's doing this, he's doing that." And then I went to Norm Macdonald. I went to Married to the Kellys. How I met to Becker. Bill Becker was Ted Danson's show, and it was right across the street from Frasier. So I would sneak in there with the different directors. With Andy was doing a lot of those. So I just kind of was like a sponge again, learning how to direct. And then the first year I did 3. The second year I did 7. The next year I did 12. The next year I did 17. And you just kind of build a resume of shows. And so I was like kind of off and running. Then Becker went off the air and Frasier went off the air. They were all sort of ending around 2005. And unfortunately, a lot of reality was taken over. Honey Boo Boo came along and knocked us all out of a job. Damn, well, Honey Boo Boo. And that Kardashian mess. But reality was becoming big in those days. So it's so much cheaper, so much cost effective for the studios. Survivor, I remember I was up for the job as the host on Survivor. And they said, well, you go and you live on a big yacht, and every once in a while you come on the island and you host little things. I said, I'm in! But I didn't get it. It's like everything, you audition for stuff. So that's when the movie came along. So I had this, 7-year career as a TV director. And then I knew Jimmy Buffett. We belonged to a club in San Francisco. And we were talking one day about airplanes and all this other stuff. And he says, I optioned this book. Read it and tell me what you think. So I read this book, which was a Newbery Award-winning book by Carl Hiaasen, who's a Florida writer who writes great adult stuff, but he started writing young adult stuff. And this was 7th grade. Kids read it in 7th grade. And so I read the script, and I said, it's a great script, make a great little family movie. And he said, well, that's what I'm thinking, and I have the rights to it, so come down and meet Carl. And I said, oh, great. So my first meeting with Jimmy in Florida was like, he picks me up in his seaplane. We fly down to the Miami Governor's Cut. We go to Joe's Stone Crabs, where he gives them all free tickets to see his show. So we walk into Joe's. Joe's is a very famous stone crabs, or this great Florida thing. We walk in there with Jimmy. It's like, oh, Mr. Buffett, come in, and the crabs are coming, I'm piled up with oysters. And then he takes me to a concert. We go see the Rolling Stones, and we're backstage, and we meet everybody backstage. And then he dumps me off, on the side of the highway at the end of the night. But I was like, oh, this was great. I want to work with you if this is the way you live. So we went to Key West to meet Carl, and over a fish sandwich, I said the way to make a movie is you get a screenplay, because there's a lot of books out there. You get a screenplay that you like, that you're happy with, and then you go out and sell that. So he said, well, how do we do that? And I said, well, you hire a writer, or I tell you what, I'll write it for WGA. I'm in the Writers Guild, so they have to pay you scale. I'll write it for scale if I can direct it, if I'm the director. And so they said, deal. Over a fish sandwich, we all shook hands. We went home, I wrote script, gave it to Jimmy, the notes, then I gave it to Carl, he had notes. Then Jimmy gave it to Frank Marshall. Frank Marshall is Kennedy Marshall is a big production entity. He did Bourne, Sixth Sense, Raiders. I mean, he and Kathleen, they're big Hollywood producers. And he read it, and he goes, this is great, but I would like to see the arc with the boy and his father standing up to his dad. And he gave us these notes, and I said, well, I was done at that point, but I said, no, I think he's right, I'll fix it. I'll do it for free. We'll address his notes. So we did that. We set up a meeting at Walden, who at the time had done Holes and the Chronicles of Narnia. And in our first meeting, we sold this movie. We pitched this thing. We walked out. Frank goes, well, this is the easiest meeting I've ever seen. I think they're going to buy it. And I said, well, we'll see. We got on Jimmy's plane because he was appearing in Vegas. And when we landed, the phone rang, and we're making the movie. And I was like, great. And they said, now we're going to get somebody to rewrite it, and we're going to get another director. And
we're going to ruin it.
And they hired this kid for $150,000 to rewrite the script, and it was terrible. His rewrite was bad. And all of us agreed, Frank and Jimmy and Carl, we all said, this is not better. And they said, okay, but Frank said, get them pregnant with their money. Let them spend it, because it'll get them invested in the movie. And he was right. So we would listen to their notes and make these revisions, and then they said, well, let's get Andy Davis to direct it. Andy Davis had done Holes for them. And to Jimmy and Carl's credit, they said, no, we're sticking with the guy we made the deal with. Will's the director, and we're off and running. So then we got, we got New Line to do this distribution. So we made this little $14 million movie in Florida, and it did okay. We were up against a couple of movies. We came out in May, which I thought was a bad time because, kids are not out of school, and it was targeted at kids. We came out against some movie called Mission Impossible.
Mission Impossible.
The Poseidon Adventure, and the Da Vinci Code. These were our three. So if you're laying out $8 for a movie, what are you going to see? So we did about $8 million at the box office, but we did about $40 or $50 million in DVD, which is where these movies tend to have their shelf life. They tend to do very well, and we did great in the rental market and all this stuff. And it still runs. It still runs in libraries. And it got inducted into the.
But it's in it was named one of the top 5 environmental films by the Smithsonian Museum.
We're still trying to ask them who made that decision. But the message was, it was about saving the environment, kids standing up for the destruction of this owls, their nesting area. And then then MoMA, the Museum of Modern Art, called, and they said, we'd like to put it in our family film collection. And I said, what does it pay? And no, and they said, we'll give you 2 free passes to MoMA for life. I said, I'm in.
But yeah, I mean, so Hoot was nominated for an Environmental Media Award, 2 nominations and a win for the 2 young leading actors. I mean, you know, how has working with these kids, working with this project, working with Jimmy Buffett, how has that affected your career? I mean, they believed in you. They went to bat for you. They did not let the studio sort of, you know, make all the decisions after that.
Well, the studio came in later and ruined it because they dumbed it down. They wanted to make it for 5-year-olds. And so, you know, some of the marketing was very young, and it cost us, and it cost me, because had Hoot made, you know, $150 million, you know, I would certainly not be here right now. I would be here, but I'd have a whole different attitude. But no, you know, it'd be on a mega yacht somewhere going, I'm not available, the Johnny Who, you know, but you know, it's you know, show business is a roller coaster, you know, and I've been lucky because I've had highs and lows, and you know, and this is one of the lows. No, you know, it's a great ride, and you know, I still enjoy it. I mean, I'm going to be 60. Is this videotaped? I'll be 50. But I still have a great time. I'm still going out. I just wrote another one of Carl's. I wrote Flush, which was his second book, and then we're trying to, you know, find financing for that. And I have a couple of things in the internet I'm doing. You know, so I stay busy. I just produced a reality show about a guy that flies to the Bahamas, and it's been great fun. We've been in the Bahamas, you know, staying at fancy resorts, eating on somebody else's dime. And so, you know, I stay busy. I keep, you know, I'm like a plate spinner on the old Ed Sullivan Show. You just keep spinning the plates, hoping something's going to pay off.
You keep throwing them up, though. That's the deal.
Yeah, well, a lot of them are broken, shattered dreams right there in front of me, so.
That's all right. There's always another plate.
Yeah, but, you know, the great thing about working live and, you know, the sound, going out, I mean, I'm still going out. I'm going to headline a theater in Miami next month. And 300 people, hopefully 300 people will show up, and I'll spend an hour and a half doing a show, comedy, and I'll show some clips, and you know, so I'm working on a play about humor, and you know, you keep sort of developing. I mean, I think that's the trick in this business is longevity. You know, when you would meet people that had a long, successful career, like, you know, Andy Griffin and Red Skelton and these guys, it was all about just staying in the game, staying vital. So
that's what keeps you going now. I mean,
yeah, and I have a young wife. She's about 15 years younger than I am. She's a trophy wife. It's not a first place trophy by any means. She loves that joke.
I can see
she'll stand up and
that joke.
Thank you. No, but she's great, and you know, and she was in show business. She worked on Full House, and I met her when I was directing Norm, and she worked on Marley and Me in Florida, and she worked on Jack and Jill, and she worked on Rock of Ages with Tom Cruise, and Tom liked her and wanted to take her on the road with her. You know, but we're trying to have a life, you know, where we, you know, have a, you know, because the life of an entertainer, as you know, you're in a lot of hotels and a lot of airports. You know, you're out. You know, you're a wandering minstrel.
Yeah, it takes real dedication to be in the same place, to continue to remain connected when you're working all the time.
Yeah.
And in 14-hour days or 16-hour days or 18-hour days.
Oh yeah, when you're making a movie, it's 30. Well, we were 34 shooting days. I would work basically up at 5:30 or 6. On the set by 6:30, doing my blocking notes for the day. The actors would show up about 7:30. Breakfast, we start shooting at 8. We'd shoot till about 6 or 7. Then we'd go to dailies, watch the process of the films we shot for the day before. We'd be in there. Then I would go home and I'd open my email and there'd be notes from the studio executives, you know, some more bad suggestions which came in, and they would have to address and rewrite the script and rewrite notes. We were writing, I mean, literally I was writing on the way home sometimes. But some of the great things came up because I asked Carl, how do they kill these owls? These owls, burrowing owls, would live in these holes, and the developers would come in and they'd shove a hose down the hole and just drown them. And I was coming home. I said, well, we don't want to see that. But so I made the bad guy. He got a big fire extinguisher, you know, and he was going to freeze him. But I thought of that like driving home from the set, and I, you know, went home and I wrote that in, and you know, tell props when we get to that, we're going to need this. And it was a very visual because he was like, you know, Clark comes out and he's hosing him down with singing, "Hello, say hello to my little friend. You know, is it cold enough for you?" And it was, you know, it turned out to be a great way to execute that scene that wasn't quite so, you know, so terrible.
Yeah.
But you know, that's part of the creative process. Just keep coming up with it.
So, if you had any advice for anybody, our students who are interested in stand-up, acting, directing, sitcoms.
Which is it exactly? Well, you can do it all. You can do it all.
Right. I mean, how do you encapsulate? It's difficult in an hour's period of time to capture your entire career. I mean, you've done everything. You know everything. You know things backstage, on stage. Pardon?
Ask me anything.
Oh. So how?
I know what storage locker those Syrian weapons are going into.
Espionage. But what advice would you give them?
I don't know. What advice do you like? Tim Tebow just got kicked off. You know, he got kicked off. You know, he's a great football player. He got kicked off. What's he going to do now? They have a Tim Tebow football camp. The kids come and sit on the bench all summer.
Yeah.
Then they kick him off the team at the end of the summer. But you know, that's the point is you get back up and you do what you do. You know, for me, I was always, you know, bobbing and weaving. You know, somebody said you can't do this, you can't do that. I mean, my advice to young people is to just learn it all. Be a sponge. You know, that's what learn how to shoot, how to edit, how to direct, how to perform, how to write, and do it all. Today, the young people here have such opportunities. You got a little audio camera, the GoPros, the iPhones. I mean, you can make movies, you know, a lot more inexpensively than I could when I made that stupid little dog film. That thing probably cost me $500 because I had to rent the camera, shoot the film, process the film, rent a moviola, cut it together, splice it together, and then telecine to get it up. You know, nowadays, you know, you can shoot and have stuff on the web. So every young person should have a website with their picture, their career resume, their dreams, their action, whatever you call it, business plan. You know, they can have, you can put up web video, stuff you've done, so that we can see you, find you, and be aware of you. You know, there's more content put on YouTube in 60 days than has been created in 60 years of broadcast television. I mean, it's just a phenomenon. To me, that's just a phenomenon. But if I was fixing to my toilet the other day and I couldn't figure out how to put the flush valve in, you go on YouTube, there's 700 videos about how to do it. I mean, you know, it's amazing. I mean, the social media, the web, Facebook. How many people are on Facebook? Yeah, everybody's on Facebook. You know, I'm on Facebook. You know, and you know who's on Facebook? I always say is a lot of your, you know, old friend losers, people you tried to shake years ago, that come out of the woodwork and want to, you know, reconnect. You know, I have old girlfriends, you know, want to reconnect for, you know, old time's sake. And my wife is on Facebook, so I did what any guy would do. I defriended my wife. But you know, these are jokes. But no, it's true. I mean, but on Facebook, you don't see people in prison posting. I don't know why that is. You know, almost got shanked in the shower, LOL. You just don't see that, you know. Warden's coming, G2G, you know, I don't know what all of this means. My cellmate says I have beautiful eyes, OMG, you know. But you think about the web, though. I mean, people, I bet in this room, has anybody met and fell in love on the web, on the internet? No, because there, right here. You met your husband?
Yes.
And you got, you know, and how long you been married?
13 years.
13 years. So congratulations. You were early to Match.com. You know, I'm setting up a website for priests on ChristianMingle.com right now. No, one time I met somebody once on the web, and we flirted over, you know, because you'll talk back and forth. We flirted for about 6 months, and we decided to meet in person. Has this happened to you? It turns out to be Chris Hansen at Dateline NBC. So weird, so weird. You're a good audience. I could just do stand-up here, you know. I'm trying.
So, do we have any questions from the audience? Can we bring up the house a little bit so we can see them, if they do?
Question? Yeah, we'll take questions. We'll make fun of you when you ask the question. So stand up and raise your hand if you do have a question. Let's see what we got out here. Why, this is not an inquisitive group. There's a lady who feels sorry for me with no questions, so she's going to...
How do you, there's such a, when you told the rabbit joke, these kids in your class.
Oh, I know, nobody gets that joke today.
How do you know, reach everybody, like, all ages? You talked about your dad and some people that know your dad. I'm familiar with your brother's work, and I watched you on TV when I, so.
When you were a kid, go ahead, say it. Go ahead. Well, you have to stay relevant. Well, you can't, like the rabbit joke, there's jokes, unfortunately, people, we were working on, I'm on a radio show in Florida every week, and we asked the interns who Johnny Carson is. They don't know who Johnny Carson is, and I always say, well, how could you not know who Johnny Carson is? I mean, you got to stay relevant, you got to keep up. I always say, I wasn't at the Lincoln assassination, but I heard about it, you got to stay relevant. I mean, part of filmmaking and for me, directing and acting is looking at the body of work that's come before you. When I was a film student, I mean, we would see everything from the great comedians, Buster Keaton, Charlie Chaplin, Harold Lloyd, the Three Stooges, the W.C. Fields. We watched all that stuff, and then we would watch Intolerance, Metropolis, Potemkin. We had a guy come in and play the organ. I mean, we fell in love with the arts that way. But it is a challenge. I mean, the jokes I did about Facebook and that stuff. You got to keep it. You got to keep it. When I go, because I go and I'll work a corporate crowd. For 200 lawyers, they're sharp, and you got to keep it sharp. And you go into a comedy club with young kids in Ed Hardy shirts. You really just. Comedy club is a great date for a lot of people because you can take a girl there, she'll laugh, she'll have a good time, she'll have a few drinks, maybe you'll get lucky, but you didn't have to do any part of that. It was all up to us on the stage. So, for me, I like to keep challenging myself. I still go into the comedy clubs. I'll go open. When I have a friend, Kevin Nealon, comes through Florida, I go and open for him. Bobby Collins, people come, and I'll go. I'll say, I'll come in, for low money, and like today, I'm earning in the high two figures, and.
Oh yeah, that's right. I owe you that $20.
I always like to say. I always like to get the money worked out before the show's over. But no, so you constantly, and I have a son who's third generation comedian, and I said it's all about writing. I said write a joke every day. When I go on stage, I always want to have a new joke every time I go on. It's something to look forward to. So I'll write new jokes, and then I'll have things that I've done for years that still get laughs. I talk about hoot and directing, and I said, when you do a movie as a director, you have to get a Hollywood physical to make sure you're in good enough shape to get through a movie, the rigors of a movie. And I said, I went to this doctor, they sent me to this doctor in Hollywood who was a little bit weird. He also undressed for the exam. And I had my prostate checked. I know we see I had my prostate checked. Now, do they normally dim the lights and open champagne? Is that the Johnny Mathis music, is that all part of it? Yeah.
Not for me.
Not for you? But now with an older crowd, you can talk about colonoscopies and prostate. A colonoscopy. I had a colonoscopy for the first time, and somebody hacked into the video. Now it's up on YouTube. But so you just try to find humor in. I just saw Bill Cosby the other night in Florida, and Bill's 75 years old. He comes out and sits in a chair. I've known Bill when I was a kid. In 1963, Bill Cosby was doing I Spy, and he lived up the hill from a friend of mine. And we used to play street football, and Bill came by in his big gold Bentley, and he rolled down his window, "What are you kids doing?" I said, "Well, hey, Mr. Cosby, how you doing?" And he says, "What are you doing Saturday?" And he invited us up to his house to watch old comedy movies. He showed us all these Keaton and and he didn't know any of us from and we all went up, and it was and I remember what an influence that was, because Bill was a star at that time. We knew him from his albums, and Jerry Seinfeld and I were doing working in Vegas, and Bill was on at the Hilton, and we went backstage and just sat in Bill's dressing room for an hour, and he lectured us and taught us about comedy. And I wish I had recorded it because I can't remember a thing he said, but hopefully some of it. And I said to Jerry, I said, "Do you remember anything Bill said to us?" He goes, "No, I wish I could remember. Why didn't we write something down?" I go, well, but so part of the goal that I learned from the older comics was to share what you've learned. I mean, because you're not going you're not going to have the same experiences we've had doing it. I mean, I've had great experience. I mean, walking out on stage, whether it was the Tonight Show or in front of 10,000 people or, you know, wherever, it's you know, it's a great joy to make people laugh, and, you know, and like my son says, bad crowd. We get bad crowds, we get great crowds, you know. You guys, good crowd. And I'm not pandering to you, because this thing's almost over. But I'm happy to entertain any questions. Yes, sir.
From a question about directing.
Yes, sir.
Can you give us an example of something you thought was just not going to work out, be an unmitigated disaster that just all happened to come together and be brilliant, so you can take credit for planning?
Well, you try to avoid the everything falling apart. I mean, there's a lot of planning and stuff. You know, I'm trying to think on Hoot. There were days where people would show up late, and, you know, and you'd have to work around it. But I never had anything really fall apart, and if it did, I blame somebody else. But yeah, no, I don't think I can't think of any disaster stories. I mean, you know, we'd had on Letterman on the morning show once, we were doing a segment where we were going to have a bar mitzvah in the performance area while the show was going on, and they were going to have sparklers and drop confetti. Well, the confetti caught on fire. This was on a live show, and all of a sudden we had an out-of-control fire on the stage, and you got grips and stage-hands coming in with fire alarms. It was a great clip, and David was very quick and went with it. And, you know, so stuff like that. On live TV, I used to do the home show, and that was a live show. And live TV, you go with it. If something goes wrong, you just kind of go with it. And we had a number of times cooking segments go bad or something could go on. And, you know, being a comic, I could always go back to find some funny way to get us out of it and get to commercial. But no. It's a lousy question, by the way.
Yeah.
Thank you.
What was the first thing you did after you left college? Just after you graduated, what's the best thing you can do after you leave?
Well, I was 2 years at the University of Florida in Gainesville studying film and television and journalism, but they didn't really have much of a film school. Then I went to UCLA, but between the two, I got a job on a movie for a year, because I was waiting to get into UCLA. And when I got out of school, I'm trying to think what I did. I pretty much just started working. I think I worked, you know, in some capacity as a comedian and as a production assistant. I was kind of balancing those two jobs at the time. But I didn't get my degree. I'm 12 units short of a degree. I'm wondering if I could pick up 12 units for this conversation.
From what I've seen, we'll talk.
Yeah, I get 6. But no, you know, so I don't know. I can't really remember.
So the whole time you were in school, were you always writing and always just talking about like your videos?
Not always. I mean, I have friends that write for the Tonight Show, and every morning they get in, they read like 10 newspapers, and they write 100 jokes every day, and that's a discipline to sit down and do that. I mean, I was always working on stuff. I always liked editing and things like that, but the ability to write jokes every day, and I tell my son that, is just, if you're going to be a stand-up comedian, you gotta. It's all about material, because the minute, you know, we work a year, 2 years to get a really good 10 minutes, and then you're on the Tonight Show and it's done. You got to cut another 10 minutes. You don't have 2 more years to come up with another 10 minutes. You know, now there are guys that are extremely prolific. George Carlin, when he shoots a special, he had the next hour already written. You know, and you know, George had a mind like that. He would go back to his room after doing a show every night and write. And he had journals, and he would develop, you know, his material. Louis C.K., I guess, does the same thing. He does a special, and he's got another one ready to go. I mean, I wish that I was that prolific. I mean, I don't know. It's hard to drink that when it's on. But yeah, if you're an aspiring performer, director, comedian, you gotta write. And I look at the DGA magazine. They have screenings of all the movies that are out. I think all of the movies that were in this magazine were directed by the guy who also wrote them. So, I mean, there's a lot less being hired to direct somebody else's work as opposed to direct your original work. So if you can create original work, you are leaps and bounds ahead of everybody else, because people will read it and then you hang on, you know. As a writer, that's what I got to hang on to Hoot, you know, as you know. And, you know, I never really wanted to work on a sitcom as a writer. That's sort of a gang writing environment. There's 10 or 15 or 20 writers, and we all sit around a table and you spitball ideas. On Frasier, it's very, you know, civilized. Everybody kind of thinks about it for a second. And then they pitch, and then on other shows, you know, you got guys that, hey, what about this and this spit take, and you know, they're going a million miles a minute. So it's all different styles, you know. But you find the environment, you find the workplace where you fit in, where you're good for the room. I mean, and you come in as a writer, and if the mix is not good there, you'll go somewhere else and write, you know. But it's, you know, it's fun. It's a great. I mean, if I could do it all over again. Isn't that what Johnny said? He would do it the same way?
The same way.
I wouldn't. I'd have a lot better hair. But yeah, I mean, it's been a fun ride. I mean, when you come and recollect, you know, look back at all this stuff. I mean, I do feel like, you know, I'm getting older, you know, but my handicap's getting lower. So in golf, you know, so you find time. You gotta. That's the other thing I tell people: don't have your only life dedicated to show business, because it'll make you crazy. There's, you know, you have to have thick skin if you're in show business. I mean, I'm a multi-instrumented pilot. I'm a scuba diver. I'm a sailor. I mean, I have all these other interests and hobbies, so that I think I'm having a stroke. I'm seeing white lights at the time. Help me, Paul. Help me. But I think it's important. You know, when you're young, you got to either have a job. I told this story, and everybody wants to be something else in Hollywood. You know, the busboy wants to be a singer. You know, the chef wants to be an actor. The waiter wants to be a waitress. It's always about doing something else. But you know, there's no reason. I mean, there's no reason in this day and age with the technology that we have that you can't do a lot of things, you know, multitask. Yeah. It's, you know, I mean, the smartphones, I mean, you know, I love the technology of smart people, and young people have no problem watching a movie on their iPhone, you know. I mean, I like to see a movie in a dark theater with good sound, but, you know, kids today, they'll watch it, but the problem with the YouTube and stuff is the attention level of the audiences are getting shorter and shorter and shorter. And, you know, the ability to gang watch, you know, House of Cards or, you know, Breaking Bad. I mean, people are watching these shows in large chunks. But the networks, they're aware that they're losing their audience, so they're just going to be content creators. And you're not going to care how you got your content, whether you're watching on your iPad, your iPhone, you're sitting in a beautiful theater like this, or you're watching it on your desktop at work when you should be working. You know, it's just all available to you, you know. So that's the exciting opportunity for people today, is that they can create and distribute content much more easily than when I had to go to a network and sell a show. I sold a show many years ago called Name Your Adventure, and it was a show for NBC daytime about kids getting to do whatever they want to do. I went in and pitched it, and we were up against 5 or 6 other shows. I hosted the pilot, and then I was replaced by, well, I replaced myself, but by Mario Lopez. I don't know whatever happened to him. He's, you know.
I saw him
he's
at
on
the
extra
airport not too long ago.
Spends a lot more time in the gym than I do, but it doesn't show. But, you know, I knew that for this show to succeed, it needed a young host, because it was a show for kids about living out their dreams. And so, you know, you have to, you know, be flexible, and you have to understand that, you know, your vision sometimes gets, you know, distorted by other people, but, you know, you just keep getting back up. Yeah. Sounds like a cliche, but it's true, you know.
Well, yes, one more question.
In your years of directing sitcoms, do you have a favorite funny story that happened on the set?
Well, there were some, like, I always liked, like in a sitcom, the director's not really expected to add jokes or humor to it, but it was always fun when you could. I was doing a Becker episode, and there was a thing where Ted was trying to get a kid to use condoms, and so he was going to scare him with it, and the joke was he was going to give him a shot or something, the joke kind of fell flat on the first 2 takes. So I gave him a line about, you know, this time the shot's going to hurt a little more than usual. So we did one more, and it got a big, big laugh, and, you know, and the showrunner looks at Ted and goes, "Hey, Ted, great ad lib, very funny." And Ted goes, "Right here, came from Wil." And to me, that was like I mean, it's so gracious of him to give me that credit for the joke, and, you know, and that's that made me feel better about anything else, that I got a joke on the show, and I always go, hey, free funny at your service, you know, but I would help when I can. And the same with David Hyde Pierce. I gave him a thing about the dog and giving the dog was supposed to, Eddie was supposed to do something and he didn't do it, and I said, just kind of do a da-da, like you're covering for him. Like that's what he's supposed to do, and David went, I don't know. And then show night, he did it, and they got a big laugh. And as he was walking by, you know, he winked, he goes, hey, it was a good idea. But you know, you never know when you make suggestions as a director what's going to land, what's going to fly. But you know, the fun of a sitcom is you do it in, you know, 2 or 3 hours in front of an audience. At the end, it's done in the can, and it's complete, and the work lives on. I just got a residual check for a Raymond I did, Run 39. You know, these shows just run and run forever. So, you know, for me to look back at Peggy Sue and look back at, you know, because, you know, unfortunately, you know, my Tonight shows will, other than here, will never be seen anywhere else, you know, unless you visit my website. But, you know, but I have that stuff up on my website to generate work for them. So the idea of, you know, work and content that you create sort of living on forever is kind of the part of the reward of doing it, you know. I wish I had a funnier story about that, but I don't. So,
great.
What?
Shall we close?
It's a bit unorthodox, but if you insist. It's been, I want to just say, I want to thank Paul for inviting me here. It's been a pleasure to come here and meet so many wonderful, nice, the Midwest's full of nice people.
We work hard. You know, we try. We do our best.
And the kids, I want to wish them all great luck with their careers. I mean, I'm sure you guys are, you know, you're sending them out in a world where you know, where show business will eat them alive. But you know, if you have thick skin, I tell my daughter thanks me all the time. She goes, Dad, I have really thick skin because of you, because I've always teased her, and she says, and it's made me, you know, it's made her capable to deal with all this stuff. And you know, and you have to have thick skin. You have to be confident in yourself and what you're doing. You know, you're going to get great accolades, and you're going to get bad reviews. You know, but you just keep going. You know, and if you believe in yourself, and that's sort of my motto is, you know, I've always believed in myself, and if this, you know, comedy thing hadn't worked out, I'm sure I'd be, you know, you want fries with that? You know.
I think probably a little better than that.
But, you know, I can't thank you for being such a great host.
I can't thank you enough for coming.
I want to thank everybody for coming out. I know you had plenty of other things to do, and I want to wish the Nebraska team good luck tomorrow.
Well, before we get too far, I have a little something for you.
You have something?
So, on behalf of the school, I wanted to make sure that we got you a little something here that you might be able to wear.
Is there a gift receipt attached?
Tomorrow. No, but
oh, look at that.
Earlier today we mentioned something about this. And,
my goodness.
And so we wanted to make sure that you had your own.
Oh, look at that.
Johnny Carson School of Theater.
Wow. This has been worn by somebody, hasn't it? There's a lot of body odor in this. Were you wearing this?
I don't even have.
You don't have one of these? Oh, well, this is great. Oh, boy, what do you think I will get when I return this? No, this is great. Yeah, I know it. No, this is great. I will wear this with pride. You have a wonderful facility here. You know, you have such a great legend to you know, pay respects to for many, many years to come. Johnny was, you know, truly one of the greats in television, and I wish you all good luck in your future, and thank you for coming.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, John. No, I'm kidding. Give me that back. That was a joke.